RFK Jr. finally revealed who the real Trump is.
A lot of things have surprised me about the president because I, bought into this fact that he was this one-dimensional character, that he was kind of a bombastic narcissist.
In a recent appearance on the Tucker Carlson podcast, the HHS secretary tore apart the media's narrative on the president, dismantling one of their favorite talking points along the way. That's why today, we're pulling back the curtain and revealing what he's like behind closed doors. Because we're not here to blindly follow the right or the left. We're here to push common sense. So if you're an independent thinker, hit the subscribe button and let's jump right into it.
A lot of things have surprised me about the president because I, bought into this fact that he was this one-dimensional character, that he was kind of a bombastic narcissist and all this. And part of it is hearing it all the time on TV, but also, the way that he conducts himself sometimes validates those. If you have that narrative, you can find things in what he does that validate that narrative. But what I've been surprised in getting to know him is what a kind of deep, multidimensional and thoughtful character he is, and how well. I also thought, he doesn't read, and he's not interested in anything. He's immensely curious, inquisitive, and immensely knowledgeable. He's encyclopedic in certain areas that you wouldn't expect, like music. And, he gets very emotional about music. And,
yes.
And he knows the whole story behind every song.
Pavarotti and James Brown.
Yeah. He cries when he hears Pavarotti. He said to me one night when we were at Mar-a-Lago with the Amarillas, he said, Amarillas, you understand this because she loves music too. And he said, but most of the people here, they don't understand it. They don't get it.
We'll get to the music part in a bit, but believe me, there are a few interesting stories to go over. But Bobby is absolutely right. If you only watch the MSM, you'd think Trump was a reincarnation of Stalin, Mao, or Mustache Man combined. Purely based on a non-stop wave of negative coverage, and there's data to back it up. Just a week before last year's election, the Media Research Center released a study showing Kamala Harris enjoyed 78% positive coverage since July, while Trump had faced 85% negative coverage on ABC, CBS, and NBC. That kind of media disparity shapes public opinion, especially among older viewers who still treat these outlets as gospel. So it's no surprise that so many people have such a distorted image of him. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk music. I'm sure you probably noticed that the Don has got a surprisingly solid taste. But don't just take my word for it. Check out this interview from 10 years ago.
Well, Rolling Stone is very special. It's always been a special magazine to me. It reminds me of my youth. It reminds me of music. I've read Rolling Stone for a long time, and whether it's the Beatles or Elton John or so many others that I like and I respect as talent, I'd see a lot about it in Rolling Stone. I wish I had the guitar. I wish I had that kind of talent, but I have so many great friends in that world. I've just found them to be very different, all different, but there's a certain level of talent beyond the music itself. Aerosmith is terrific. Steven Tyler, that whole group is just a terrific group. John Bon Jovi is a great guy. Pavarotti was a very dear friend of mine. I loved Pavarotti. I knew Michael Jackson very well. He lived in this building. I knew him better than probably almost anybody. Paul McCartney, terrific guy, and you see him around New York, everybody loves him, and his politics probably aren't mine, and that's okay, I don't care.
Yep, the man is basically a walking Spotify playlist. Not only that, but it's widely reported that he picks his own rally music, which has landed him in trouble with a few artists whose songs have been featured during these events. And when it comes to Pavarotti, the story goes back to early 2000s, when the opera legend reportedly failed to deliver at one of Trump's casinos due to a cold, to which he asked for a refund. But the next year, Pavarotti returned and gave a free show to the same audience. Since then, Pavarotti's powerful voice has echoed through multiple Trump rallies, despite his widow's objections.
On Wall Street, he knows how everybody made their money and the stories, and he's, an incredible raconteur about telling all these stories. And then, and also the most surprising thing is because I had him pegged as a narcissist, but narcissists are incapable of empathy, and he's one of the most empathetic people that I've met. You notice whenever he talks about the Ukraine war,
Yes,
he always talks about the casualties on both sides every time he talks about it.
I have noticed that.
And he does that in every theater. He talks about how human beings are affected by it, whether it's vaccines or Medicaid or Medicare. He's always thinking about how this impacts the little guy. And, the Democrats have him pegged as a guy who's sort of sitting, in the cabinet meeting talking about how can we make billionaires richer. He's the opposite of that. He's a genuine populist.
Exactly. For all the criticism about his style, Trump's foreign policy had one clear thought line: avoiding war, brokering peace agreements, and preserving American lives, which shows he cares about not sending other people's kids overseas. He made it a point not to entangle the US in endless military conflicts, even when tensions peaked with countries like Iran. But when it comes to Ukraine, that's where things get murky. Trump's repeated claims that he could end the war on day one, which sounded great on the campaign trail, but that was just not realistic. Conflict between two deeply entrenched sides, each with its own interests and backing from global powers, doesn't get resolved with a handshake and a photo op. RFK Jr. brought all the points he talked about with one brilliant conclusion, explaining why having Trump back in the White House was absolutely critical for the country.
And, President Trump does that. Whatever you think about him, there's a new feeling in America now that, we're back on the upswing again. As he says, the country is hot again, And all around the world, people see that too. Like all of us, we're all flawed characters in one way or another. But I think he's really the uniquely right person for this country right now, because we were in a death spiral, and not only just morale, but also just the deficits are who could ever, would you believe we'd ever have a president in our lifetime who would actually be addressing the costs of government in a dramatic way?
No.
And the trade deficits, how could you ever cure that? They're just too entrenched, and so many people making money on them, but meanwhile us all going to hell in a handbasket. And so I think he's doing stuff at great political cost to him that is going to benefit this country 10 years from now and 20 years from now. And, I'm really proud to be part of it.
It's hard not to notice how much of a turnaround this is for RFK Jr., especially since he was one of Trump's harshest critics a decade ago. And even last year, before ending his campaign, he criticized Trump non-stop, calling him absurd and terrifying, slamming him as a terrible president, in addition to criticizing the spending during his first term. So, what changed? It seems meeting Trump face-to-face might have shifted his perspective. There's something about seeing someone up close, how they think, how they act behind the curtain, that can make or break an impression. For Bobby, it clearly did the former. But that's all for today's video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and remember, keep on thinking.